So a pattern that I've worked really closely with a few clients with is actually the captain pattern. I had a client recently actually that I worked with for some time that was in had a retail business, and the captain pattern is basically like they're the captain of the ship, if you can imagine. So if they're the CEO, the boss, or the owner of the company, they're basically the captain of the ship, and they know and you don't. So they basically have a very strong right-wrong thinking, especially with staff, and they want their staff to follow orders, follow their views and their strategies, and they've really got a sense of I'm right and everyone else must follow. And that's really, really detrimental to the business. And an individual with this kind of viewpoint, when you're starting out in business, actually, the captain pattern can be really beneficial because you're solid in your view and there's little self-doubt and you're basically all guns blazing. But once you start to recruit staff, when the blind spots can really come up and be really prevalent in the business. So that the client that I had really, once they had staff, it became a matter of really low staff morale, and there was a lot of fear in the business and a lot of walking on tight ropes around the captain of the ship because they couldn't express their views, and it really stunted the growth. So the captain of the ship didn't like anybody to challenge her because she didn't want to be seen as having less knowledge than her staff. But as we all know here, that you want to recruit people that have more knowledge than you. You want to recruit experts in the business, and the captain of the ship really wants to know where their strengths and their weaknesses lie, because they want to be there and they want to recruit people in every other aspect of the business that they're not good in. But this captain of the ship pattern really prevents them from having that knowledge and that insight to be able to recruit those people. And you know, the person that I worked with, they really were underneath the captain of the ship. They were really run by a pattern of actual low self-worth. If they were challenged within their business, then it would bring up feelings of low self-worth and that they weren't good enough. So an awareness of those underlying emotions really helped her in that blind spot to be able to then be challenged and to be able to integrate different views, and that really led to an exponential growth in the business, actually.
Yeah, I think what you said is really important. The actual blind spot in the captain pattern is low self-worth. And for anyone with a captain pattern, they may not even know that they have low self-worth because there's such a big blind spot to them. Yeah, they won't admit it's on the unconscious level.
Massive.
But the game of the game to escape their feelings of low self-worth is to be in control, to be right, to be seen as the best. It can lead to, you know, like we often say that the polarity of the low self-worth part is going to be arrogant. So a lot of people don't realise that, but you know, in this work we know someone that's arrogant will not always, but they'll tend to have low self-worth on the unconscious level. That's driving the need for the arrogance and the power. The other thing that you said that I felt, first of all, thought was interesting and wanted to dig into a little bit more. It's kind of true what you said. Early stage business, it's really good to have the captain pattern. In its functional element, it's probably never good to have it, but in its functional element, because you do need to control. You do need to be sure, and you drive that thing. So when we talk about control, you know, early stage, you might want to micromanage everything. That might be considered a good thing, but we know that, you know, later stage development of a business when it's consolidated and basic operational processes are in place and it's producing some profit, then you've got to look at letting go of control. So as an example, if I have you two on my team, then I've got to pass control to you as an example. That will create more scale, and a business tends to run more successfully in later stage development if control is taken away from one person and different departments heads are allowed to have control over that particular department, etc., etc., etc. So yeah, I can see where it serves, and then it gets to the point where it doesn't serve. Georgina, any insight to this pattern?
Well, I think, Perry, that the captain pattern, one of the key things to remember with all of these patterns is we're mainly looking at the blind spots. That's what people want to be able to figure out so that they can do better in their business. But on some level, we need to have a captain. We need to know that someone is going to make the decisions, that someone is going to take the leadership role, so that the staff that you recruit, it's crucial that when you are in the recruitment process, that you do get people who have the expertise, but that they know what the limits are as far as their ability to make decisions, where the line has to be drawn and the leader has to make the decision, because perhaps the particular expert in one area may not see the overall picture, which is what the captain can. When the captain's sailing the ship, he knows everything, or she knows everything that needs to be done. So in a functional way, we want to make sure that the business owner does have some aspect of the captain pattern. Otherwise, what will happen is there'll be staff members who will take over and start running your business for you in a way that you may not want it to be run.
Yeah, look, what you're talking about is the functional element of the captain. And so a functional captain, and you actually see this played out in the movies all the time, so it's actually what we'd consider an archetypal pattern. The general of the armed forces, or the captain of the plane, he's being advised by people he should do this or he should do that. And the whole dynamic of the movie is he's got to come to his own decision, and if he makes the wrong decision, he's going to fail, but he's going to back his decision. Oftentimes that's the functional attribute of the captain pattern. And what Gab was alluding to before, when it becomes dysfunctional, it's about keeping away from one's low self-worth, having to be better than others. And I think another key thing in this conversation is accountability. This dysfunctional captain is not willing. So someone with a captain pattern that's tending towards the dysfunctional end of the spectrum, they don't want accountability, because our accountability will trigger their low self-worth. They have to stay in power. Interesting, because as you're talking about this, I was thinking about a gentleman that I've consulted with for years, meaning him and I have consulted to business owners together. We get on really, really well. Very smart man. I asked him to come and be involved with our business, and he said, "Perry, are you up to accountability?" He said to me, 8 out of 10 business owners don't want to be kept accountable to me because he's a strong taskmaster. And I'm thinking, why wouldn't they? The guy's brilliant. But a dysfunctional captain wouldn't want that.
It would bring up this pattern, and it would be too emotionally triggering for them.
Yeah, and that's right. The other thing that I'm thinking about is about power, of course. They must be in power. They must be in power. And power to them means having power over others. So they'll tend to look up and down at people. Okay, I look down at you. I'm above you. And that's why they don't want accountability, because that means you're above me. Which means that I'm less than, and that starts to trigger the low self-worth. Anything before we wrap up with the captain pattern?
You guys are really just reminding me of all the different aspects of the business owner that I had. And like you've just said, this is probably one of the hardest patterns for an individual to really grasp and to really own and really take responsibility for. It's just, I know that with my client, it took a really long time for them to really own this pattern, because it's so shattering to their sense of self. But I guess the way that I really got through to my client was to really look at the decision-making process. And in the decision-making process, you can really have an awareness of how you're making decisions within the business. So for her, she was really, she had fantastic ideas, and she was really solid in her ideas, and she could really implement them. And as Georgina said, really follow through on the decision-making process, but she wouldn't bring anyone in. So I really had to bring an awareness to that decision-making process of how rigid it actually was as her being the captain of the ship, and that she wouldn't allow any other views to really enhance that decision-making. So in bringing her awareness to how that decision is made within the business, I was allowed I was able to help her slowly see how she was being the captain of the ship. And it's you're making decisions every day in business, so it's something that you can just notice.
By the way, you did that without having to bring her attention to the low self-worth on the unconscious level.
That's right.
So it's a way of working with her. Yeah, because it's interesting what you've just said, because as practitioners, we work with people all the time. that would be a hard one to bust, because this pattern, the captain pattern, is driven. I don't want to feel any low self-worth. I don't want to feel any vulnerability. I don't want to feel wrong. So every part of their personality is invested in being right, the boss, in power. So when you go to work with them, they don't even know they've got low self-worth. They just can just see the surface behaviours, can't even see that properly. So that's a smart way of dealing with it, Gab. Yeah. Anything before we finish off with the captain pattern? No.
I'm good.
Right.